The world is silent. This is the first wrong thing. It should be roaring. It should be shaking with the thunder of guns, screaming with the fury of men. An hour ago it was. Now there is only the crackle of dying flames and the low, wet groan of dying metal. Captain Ivan Vetrov exhales. A bubble of blood forms in the mud by his mouth. He is not wounded. The blood is not his. It is in the soil, in the air, a fine mist settled on every leaf, every shattered piece of steel. He is buried in it. He has been buried for hours, playing dead so perfectly he almost believed it. Slowly, a statue coming to life, he pushes himself up. The mud peels from his back with a sick, sucking sound. The scene before him is not a battlefield. It is a factory of death that has completed its shift. The blackened skeletons of tanks, his tanks, are scattered like toys thrown by a giant. Among them, darker shapes. Many, many shapes. He stands. His joints scream. His mind is a cold, empty vault. He does not look at the faces of the dead. He walks towards a slight rise, his boots making thick, sticky sounds in the muck. From the top, he can see the cause. A bridge. 2 kilometers away, a concrete bridge spans the narrow river. It is intact. Smoke drifts lazily from its far side, where the enemy column, a dark caterpillar of victory, continues to crawl across, uninterrupted. It should be a pile of rubble in the water. He had wired it himself. Charges placed with meticulous care on the central pier. He stood for 2 hours, waiting for the retreat order, for the command to close the jaws. The order never came. Command believed the line could hold. Command was wrong. Then it was too late. The first enemy scouts were on the bridge. Detonating it would kill a handful, but seal the fate of 3 retreating battalions caught on this side. A captain does not make that choice. So he watched. He watched as the floodgates opened and the horror poured across. A sound. A human sound. To his left, a crumpled figure moves. A young soldier, his uniform soaked dark around the stomach, is trying to crawl. His eyes, wide with shock, find Vetrov. Recognition flickers. Captain. The word is a wet rasp. Vetrov is beside him in an instant. Applying pressure he knows is useless. The fabric is pulp. "The bridge," the soldier whispers, each breath a gargle. "Sir, why? Why didn't we blow it?" The question hangs in the toxic air. It is not an accusation. It is the pure, bewildered inquiry of a dying boy who does not understand the mechanics of his own extinction. Vetrov has no answer. His hand, pressed against the fatal wound, feels the life pulse out in weakening spasms. The boy's eyes lock onto his, searching for a reason, for comfort, for anything. They find only the same empty horror reflected back. The light in them fades, leaving 2 dull blue marbles pointed at the gray sky, at the intact bridge. Vetrov closes the boy's eyes. He does it gently. He picks up the boy's helmet, places it over his face, a pointless gesture of dignity in a field of obscenity. This is the second wrong thing. He is alive. He moves north, away from the sounds of the advancing enemy, away from the bridge that haunts him. He is a ghost in a graveyard of his own men. For hours, he walks. The landscape changes from blasted hell to a bruised, empty countryside. The sound of the front is a distant storm on the eastern horizon. He finds the farmhouse at dusk. It is a shell, roof gone, one wall standing. Inside he finds the source of the crackling. A field radio, powered by a dying battery, sits on a scorched table. The voice from the speaker is thin, laced with panic and static. Elements of the 7th Panzer have bypassed Krivoy Log, advancing along Highway 7, Estimate they will reach the Mauresia River line by Oro 600 tomorrow. We cannot hold if they consolidate with the southern group. Their supply route is confirmed. The only heavy crossing is at Grid Echo 7. Vetrov's eyes close. He sees the map in his mind. He knows the Mauresia. He knows the bridge at Grid Echo 7. A bigger, stronger version of the one now at his back. The radio voice continues, desperate. Any assets in sector? Air support is negative. Repeat, negative. Artillery cannot reach. The bridge must not stand. Silence. Then a burst of frustrated static. The voice is almost a sob. God, is anyone out there? The bridge. Vetrov's hand reaches out. He switches the radio off. The sudden silence is heavier than the noise. Headlights slice through the growing dark outside. Not the cautious lights of a scout, but the reckless, bouncing beams of a vehicle driving hard over broken ground. A Soviet jeep, caked in mud and desperation, skids to a halt. A colonel, his face a mask of soot and exhaustion, stumbles out. Not towards the farmhouse, but towards the edge of the field. He bends over, hands on his knees, as if to vomit. But he just breathes. Great heaving breaths of a man carrying the weight of a collapsing army. His aide, a pale lieutenant, stands by the jeep, clutching a map case like a holy relic. Vetrov steps from the shadow of the broken wall. He makes no sound. The colonel sees him. There is no start of surprise, only a slow, weary assessment. He looks at Vetrov's empty hands, his hollow eyes, the layer of grime and dried blood that is his uniform. Vetrov, the colonel says. It is not a question. Ivan Vetrov, sappers, 14th Engineers. Vetrov says nothing. We pulled the manifest from the 14th, the lieutenant says, his voice too loud in the quiet. Missing, presumed. But your commander. He said if anyone made it out of that, if anyone could, it would be you. He said you were a ghost who understood steel and stone. The colonel straightens. He walks to Vetrov, stopping a meter away. He doesn't offer a hand. He just looks. You saw the bridge today, the colonel says. His voice is low, flat. You know what happens when the wrong bridge stands. A muscle twitches in Vetrov's jaw. The image of the dying boy's eyes flashes, white-hot. Now there is another bridge, the colonel continues, 50 kilometers behind where their front line is now. It is the only thing feeding their spearhead. If it falls, their tanks become monuments. If it stands tomorrow, our new line at Mauresia will be another field, like this one, only 10 times bigger. The lieutenant unfolds the map on the hood of the jeep. He points to a dense patch of green. The Surok Swamp, ancient forest. No roads, no strategic value. Their patrols ignore it. It is a wall of water and rot. His finger traces a thin, hypothetical line through the green, ending at a small symbol over a river. It ends here, 3 kilometers from the bridge. He looks at Vetrov, then at the vast, dark emptiness of the landscape behind him. A man could walk that, if he knew how to move, if he didn't mind the dark. The colonel reaches into the jeep. He pulls out a rucksack. It is small, compact, impossibly heavy for its size. He holds it out. Hexagen blocks, primer cord, waterproof detonators with timers and a manual trigger, a knife, a PSS silent pistol, 6 rounds, 1 ampule of potassium cyanide. He lists the contents like a grim grocery list. No radio, no dog tags, no standard issue. You are a shadow. Your mission does not exist. If you are caught, you were a deserter, looting the dead. The cyanide is a courtesy. Vetrov looks from the bag to the colonel's face. He sees no inspiration, no patriotic fire. He sees only the brutal calculus of survival. 1 life, measured against 10,000. A ghost sent to kill a bridge. He takes the bag. The weight is familiar, comforting in its deadly potential. He opens the top flap. Inside, nestled beside the blocks of explosive, is a single photograph. An aerial reconnaissance shot. The Mareja Bridge, clean, sharp, strong. He studies it for a full minute. His eyes trace the lines of the arches, the piers, the abutments. He is not seeing a photograph. He is seeing stress points, fracture lines, the exact spot where a kilogram of properly placed hell can make thousands of tons of concrete disobey gravity. He looks up. The colonel and the lieutenant are watching him, waiting for a speech, for a question, for anything. Vetrov slings the pack onto his back. He adjusts the straps. He turns his gaze north, towards the distant, deeper darkness that is the Surok forest. The swamp that is his only road. 12 hours, he says, his voice a dry rustle, the first words he has spoken since the boy died. The timer. Set the primer for a 12-hour delay from initial arming. The colonel nods. Once. The order has been understood, accepted, and is now in motion. There is nothing more to say. Vetrov walks. He does not look back at the officers, at the jeep, at the spectral farmhouse. He walks past the last broken fence post, into the tall, dead grass that leads to the tree line. The night swallows him in stages. First his form blurs, then it is a darker patch in the gloom, then it is nothing. Back at the jeep, the lieutenant shivers, though the night is not cold. Do you think... Can he really do it, Colonel? The colonel lights a cigarette, the match flare illuminating the deep grooves of despair on his face. He stares at the emptiness where the man disappeared. I don't know, he says, exhaling smoke. But that bridge back there, the one that cost us 1,000 men today, he looked at it like a man looks at the lover who betrayed him. He will try. That is all we have left. A ghost with a grudge. He flicks the cigarette away, a tiny dying meteor in the vast dark. Now we wait, and we hope he is the monster they need him to be. The swamp does not welcome him. It tolerates him. It tests every gram of his being from the first step. The ancient forest is a cathedral of decay. Gigantic, moss-bearded trees rise from a black, sucking mire. The air is thick, warm, and smells of wet earth and rotting vegetation. Sound is deadened, absorbed by the spongy ground and hanging moss. It is a green, silent tomb. Vetrov moves not like a soldier, but like a predator. A meter a minute, sometimes less. He does not walk. He flows. He places each foot with infinite care, testing the ground ahead, with a long, sharpened stick. To step wrong is to sink to the waist in cold, peat-stained water. To struggle is to sink deeper. His world shrinks to a series of perfect, silent actions. He sees a patch of soft, vibrant green moss. He avoids it. Moss means water, means a hidden sinkhole. He steps on the gnarled, exposed root of a fallen giant instead. A twig lies in his path, dry and pale against the dark mulch. He does not step over it. He kneels, his movement slow as a settling fog, and lifts it, placing it soundlessly to the side. He smooths the imprint his knee left in the soft ground. He is a sculptor, and his medium is his own absence. Hours blur. The light filtering through the dense canopy shifts from black to a dull, greenish gloom. It is perpetual twilight. He checks his compass, a ritual performed under the cover of his body so no metallic glint can betray him. He is on course. Thirst becomes a raw ache in his throat. He does not drink from his canteen. He finds a slow seep of water trickling down a rock face. He watches it for 10 minutes. A mosquito lands on the wet stone, drinks, flies away unharmed. Vetrov takes a small cup, fills it, adds 2 purification tablets. He waits. He sips. The water tastes of iron and peat. It is life. Hunger is a colder, more familiar companion. He opens a tin of thick, greasy calorie paste. He eats 1 small scoop, letting it dissolve on his tongue. He seals the tin, wiping the edge clean before closing it. No smell. No trace. The memories come in the silence. Not as thoughts, but as sensations. The heat of the burning tanks on his face, the specific sound of the dying boy's breath, the feel of the demolition switch in his hand on the other bridge, smooth and cool, waiting for an order that never came. He does not push them away. He uses them. They are the fuel for his focus. Every silent step is a penance for that stillness of his hand. He freezes. A sound that is not of the swamp. A metallic click, faint, but wrong. He sinks down, lower than the ferns, becoming a shadow among shadows. He breathes through his nose, slow and shallow. His hand finds the knife on his belt. 50 meters ahead, through a tangle of vine, he sees movement. A shape in mottled camouflage. An enemy soldier. Alone. A deserter? A lost patrol? The man is looking at the ground, cursing softly in his own language. He has stepped into a knee-deep pool. He is struggling, pulling at his boot. Vetrov calculates. The man is between him and his line of advance. A wide detour would cost an hour, maybe 2. Time he does not have. The man is armed with an assault rifle slung on his back. He is young, frightened, preoccupied with the swamp. Vetrov makes a decision. It is not a decision of anger, but of efficiency. He becomes liquid shadow. He circles downwind, using the man's own splashing and muttering as cover. The ground here is firmer, a slight ridge. He moves on his belly, the cold muck soaking into his clothes. He is 10 meters away. 5. The enemy soldier frees his boot with a wet pop and slumps against a tree, breathing hard. He pulls out a cigarette. Vetrov rises. He does not leap. He simply stands up from the ferns, 2 meters behind the man. He is there, a sudden, silent manifestation of the swamp itself. The soldier senses a presence, starts to turn. Vetrov's left arm hooks around the man's neck, clamping over his mouth and nose, cutting off air and sound. His right hand brings the knife up. He does not stab. He draws the blade with precise, tremendous force across the exposed throat below the jawline. It is not a slash. It is a surgical cut. There is a hot, wet sigh against his palm. The body convulses once, a violent shudder, then goes limp. Vetrov holds him, lowering the weight gently to the ground, guiding the collapse so it makes no splash. He lays the soldier down in the ferns, face up. The eyes are open, staring at the green canopy, with the same bewildered shock Vetrov saw in the field. The cigarette lies in the black water, extinguished. He feels nothing. No thrill, no remorse. It was a task, like clearing a fallen branch. He quickly searches the body. A photograph of a woman in a pocket. A letter. A small chocolate bar. He takes nothing. He pushes the body into a deeper, darker pool with his boot. It sinks slowly, the camouflage blending into the peat-stained water, until it is gone. Bubbles rise, then stop. The swamp resumes its silence. The entire encounter has taken less than 90 seconds. No cry, no gunshot. Only the soft gurgle of water filling a dead man's lungs. Vetrov cleans his knife in the water, wipes it dry on moss. He moves on. His pace is unchanged. The encounter is already fading, another piece of data stored in the cold vault of his mind. As full dark envelops the swamp, he finds a place to rest. Not a camp, a niche, a hollow under the massive sloping roots of a centuries-old oak, high enough to be above the waterline. He slips into the space, pulling his pack after him. He is invisible. He eats another scoop of paste. He checks his equipment. The explosive blocks are dry. The detonators are secure. He takes out the photograph of the Mareja Bridge. In the near-total darkness, he cannot see it. But he doesn't need to. He has memorized every line, every angle. He sees the weak point. The southeastern pier, where the concrete meets the bedrock. The heart. He puts the photo away. He closes his eyes. He does not sleep, not truly. He enters a state of suspended animation, his ears parsing the night sounds of the swamp, the croak of a frog, the skitter of an insect, the drip of water. Any sound that does not belong will jerk him back to full awareness. He is not a man in a swamp. He is a will contained in flesh, moving through a liquid world. The bridge is still dozens of kilometers away. But with every silent, painstaking meter, he is pulling it closer. He is the coming storm, and the storm makes no sound until it strikes. The swamp spat him out at dawn. One moment he was knee-deep in primordial ooze, the next his hand found purchase on a root, and he hauled himself onto firm, dry ground. The forest thinned. The air changed. It smelled of wood smoke and damp soil, not of decay. Vetrov lay at the tree line for an hour, motionless. Before him lay a shallow, mist-shrouded valley, a village, a handful of wooden houses clustered around a single dirt road that wound down to the river. And the river, the Mareja. It was wider than he had imagined, a broad, powerful slab of gray water, moving with a slow, muscular current, and spanning it, like a grim gray ruler, was the bridge. It was not beautiful. It was functional. Massive concrete piers, two in the center of the deep channel, anchored it to the bedrock. Steel girders formed a rigid frame, a roadbed wide enough for 2 tanks to pass abreast. It was a statement of pure industrial purpose. The artery. From this distance it looked invincible. He began his work. Time was no longer a concept of hours, but of shadows and light. He became a fixture of the landscape, a mossy rock, a tangled bush. He chose his observation post not on a hill, but in the water, a small reedy inlet 50 meters downstream from the bridge's eastern bank. He waded in, the cold a shock that locked his breath in his chest. He settled until only his head was above the surface, camouflaged by tall reeds and hanging willow branches. A piece of hollow river cane prepared in the swamp became his breathing tube. He submerged completely, becoming a log, a shadow on the riverbed. From here, through the veil of reeds, he watched. His eyes were the only part of him that moved. He saw the pattern. 2 sentries at the near end of the bridge in a sand-bagged post. They changed every 4 hours. Bored, young, smoking. They watched the road, not the riverbank. A single machine gun nest on the far side, higher up, covering the approach. A patrol. 2 men with a dog. They walked the length of the bridge every 2 hours. The dog, a large German shepherd, was alert, straining at its leash. But the handlers were bored, walking a routine. They looked at their boots, at the sky, anywhere but at the intricate steel latticework beneath their feet. He saw the rhythm. At 800, a motorcycle with an officer crossed. At 1200, a truck with hot food for the guards. At 1600, the shift change. The new guards were more alert for the first 30 minutes, then settled into the same dull vigilance. He saw the weakness. It wasn't in the guards. It was in the bridge itself. The southern pier, the one facing him. At its base, just above the waterline, the concrete was discolored. A darker damp stain, a flaw in the pour, or erosion from the current. A crack, invisible from the road, but from his angle, a faint, dark line. That was the heart. That was where pressure, expertly applied, would turn strength into catastrophic failure. The sun climbed, peaked, began to fall. Vetrov remained in the water, submerged for 20 minutes at a time, then rising just enough to breathe normally, his face a pale stone among the reeds. The cold seeped into his bones, a deep, marrow-deep ache. He ignored it. The ache was data. It meant he was alive. A new sound. Not the rumble of a truck, but the high, carefree laughter of a child. A boy, maybe 8 years old, in patched trousers, no shoes. He came down to the riverbank not 50 meters from Vetrov's hiding place, carrying a fishing pole. He was humming, a tuneless, happy sound. He cast his line into the eddies near the bridge pier. Vetrov stopped breathing. The boy was an equation he had not factored. Innocence as a variable. The child sat on a rock, kicking his bare heels. He glanced towards the bridge guards, waved. One of them waved back, shouted something familiar, friendly. The boy was local. He belonged here. For a terrifying hour, the boy fished. Every second was an eternity. Vetrov's submerged body trembled, not from cold, but from sheer, focused will. If the boy wandered this way, if he saw something, a shape in the reeds, a glint of an eye, the mission would not tolerate witnesses. The brutal calculus of war included this now. A child on a riverbank. Vetrov's hand, under the water, found the grip of the silent pistol. The metal was colder than the river. The boy caught nothing. With a sigh, he reeled in his line, stood up, and stretched. He looked directly towards Vetrov's reeds for a long moment. Vetrov saw his own death in the boy's curious gaze. Not a soldier's death, but an end that would damn him utterly. The boy shrugged, turned, and scampered back up the path towards the village, whistling. Vetrov slowly exhaled a stream of bubbles through his tube. The tension uncoiled, leaving a hollow, sick feeling in its place. He had been prepared to become a monster. The universe had not demanded it, this time. He felt no relief. Only a colder understanding of the precipice he walked. Dusk bled into night. Lights appeared on the bridge, weak, hooded bulbs at the sentry posts. They created pools of yellow light and deeper pools of impenetrable shadow beneath the bridge's superstructure. It was time. He waited for the patrol. He heard their boots on the roadbed above, the click of the dog's nails. He heard the bored mutter of the soldiers as they passed directly over his head. He waited for the sound to fade, for the bridge to settle back into its nocturnal rhythm. He moved. He slipped from the reeds, a dark shape merging with the dark water. He swam, not on the surface, but just below it, using a slow, powerful frog kick, his pack floating beside him on a small, inflated bladder. The current helped, pulling him towards the massive stone pier. He reached it. The concrete was slimy, alive with algae. He felt the crack with his fingers, a vertical fissure wide enough to wedge a knife blade into. Perfect. From his pack, he took the first block of hexogen. It was wrapped in dark, waterproof rubber. Using magnets and straps of silent, elastic cord, he secured it deep in the shadow where the pier met the water. He worked by touch, each movement practiced, precise, inevitable. A second block joined the first. He connected the primer cord, a soft, pliable line of pure potential, weaving it between the charges. He was inside the enemy's fortress. They walked above him, smoked above him, dreamed of home above him. He was the cancer in the bone, unseen, unheard. He worked for an hour. The charges were placed, not for spectacle, but for efficiency. They would not blow the bridge up. They would encourage it to collapse in on itself, to break its own back. He set the clockwork timer, a soft, internal click as the mechanism engaged. 12 hours. The dawn would not bring light. It would bring a fire that consumed concrete and steel. He prepared the manual trigger as a backup, a simple pressure switch on a wire. He would hide it nearby before he left. A sudden, blinding light swept across the water. A spotlight from the far bank. A routine sweep. It painted the pier in stark white. Vetrov pressed himself into the fissure, his face against the cold concrete. The light passed over the water, where he had just been swimming. It lingered on the ripples. It climbed the pier, inches from his clinging fingers. He closed his eyes, becoming stone. The light swept on, bored routine. In the returning darkness, he finished his work. His hands were steady. The cold was a memory. He was now part of the bridge, its final, fatal flaw made manifest. He had inscribed his answer to the dead boy's question onto the concrete. This bridge would blow. He placed the final charge. The bridge was now, in every way that mattered, already dead. It just didn't know it yet. The manual trigger was the last prayer. A thin, insulated wire ran from the explosive core, up the slimy pier, into a crack in the stone riprap of the bank. Vetrov buried the pressure switch there, under a flat, heavy rock that looked like all the others. One firm step in the right place would complete the circuit. A final vengeful god under a stone. He retreated back into the river, a shadow dissolving in ink. His plan was to swim downstream, to let the current carry him a kilometer, then slip into the forest on the far side and begin the long evasion. He was a ghost who had delivered his message, now to vanish. He took 3 silent strokes. A sound. Not from the bridge, from the village path. Boots. Many of them. Not the lazy shuffle of the patrol. This was the crisp, purposeful tramp of men moving with intent, and voices. Angry, alarmed voices in the enemy's tongue. A flashlight beam cut the night, not the sweeping searchlight, but a probing, jabbing finger of light from the bank. It illuminated the path where the boy had fished. It swept over the water. Vetrov sank, only his nostrils and eyes above the surface. The cold was now a deep, permanent burn in his marrow. The light stopped. It focused on the reeds. His reeds, the ones he had used as his observation blind for an entire day. The beam held there, unwavering. A voice barked an order. The dog. He heard the frantic scratching, the low growl. They had brought the dog to the water's edge. It had caught a scent. Not his current scent from the water, but the older, lingering scent from his long vigil. The dog was obsessed, pulling its handler towards the crushed reeds. They knew. Not about the charges. Not yet. But they knew someone had been there, watching. A new, deeper fear, colder than the river water, shot through him. The patrol would be alerted. They would search the bridge. Not just the roadbed. They would look underneath. In the dark, with flashlights, they would see the fresh, clean lines of the explosive blocks against the algae-covered concrete. They would see the primer cord. His work, his perfect, silent work, would be discovered and disarmed in minutes. The bridge would stand. The tanks would cross. The field of the dead would be replicated tenfold. His retreat was cut off. The bank behind him now swarmed with soldiers and a frantic dog. The bridge ahead was still quiet, but its awakening was seconds away. There was only one direction left. Up. He swam, not away, but forward. Back towards the massive pier. Back towards the bomb he had just planted. The spotlight from the far bank began its lazy sweep again. He timed it. As it passed, he surged the final meters and grasped the cold concrete. He did not cling to the outside. He pulled himself up, finding fingerholds in the rough aggregate, and slipped into the jungle of the bridge's superstructure. A maze of steel I-beams, cross braces, and riveted plates rose into the darkness above the water. It was a metal forest, draped in shadows and pigeon droppings. He climbed. Hand over hand, foot on narrow ledges, moving into the steel gut of the beast. He was 10 meters above the water, nestled in a junction of beams, when the world exploded into light and noise from below. Voices shouted from the bank, calling up to the sentry post. Flashlights bobbed. The 2 guards from the near side, now alert, leaned over the railing, shining their own lights down the side of the pier. The beams skittered over the water, over the concrete. One beam passed directly over the dark, rectangular shapes of the charges. It did not stop. It moved on, then jerked back. A sharp cry. The beam held steady on the explosives. Chaos. A siren began to wail from the far bank, a ragged electronic shriek that tore the night apart. More lights blazed to life on the bridge itself. Boots pounded on the roadbed above his head. Orders were screamed. Vetrov pressed himself into a steel crevice. He was trapped in a metal cage, and the cage was coming alive with angry hornets. He could see them now, soldiers running to the railing, pointing. One, an officer, was shouting and pointing directly downwards at the base of the pier. They would send men down. They would defuse it. He had minutes, maybe less. His hand went to the silent pistol. 6 rounds. Against a bridge garrison. It was a joke. It was a last, desperate punctuation mark. Then he saw it. A maintenance ladder, bolted to the inside of the girder, leading all the way up to the roadbed itself. It was a vertical tunnel through the steelwork, emerging near the sentry post. A suicidal idea solidified in his mind, cold and sharp as a blade. He could not run. He could not hide. The only direction left was through. As 2 soldiers began to clamber down ropes towards the charges, Vetrov moved. He did not climb the ladder. He climbed the girders themselves, moving laterally, silently, above the heads of the men descending. He was a spider in a web of his own making. He reached a point directly underneath the sentry post. He could hear the 2 guards above him, their voices tense, yelling down to the men on the ropes. Vetrov took the pistol. He aimed not at the guards, but at the powerful light, mounted on the corner of their sandbagged post. He fired. Phut. The glass shattered with a muted crack. The bright pool of light at the near end of the bridge vanished, plunging the area into comparative darkness. Shouts of confusion. The guards spun, trying to understand. Phut. The second light died. Now they were looking for a shooter in the dark. Their flashlights swept the road, the banks. Vetrov holstered the pistol. He drew his knife. He seized the moment of confusion and swarmed up the last few meters of girder, right at the edge of the roadbed. He waited. A guard, cautious, leaned over the railing just above him, shining his light down into the superstructure. The beam lit up Vetrov's pale, grim face from inches away. The man's eyes went wide. His mouth opened to scream. Vetrov's hand shot up like a striking snake. He grabbed the man's helmet strap, yanked him forward with terrible force. At the same time, his knife rose and found the soft hollow between the man's jaw and his body armor. A single, deep thrust. The scream died in a wet gurgle. Vetrov pulled the convulsing body over the railing. It fell silently, a sack of meat and gear, down into the dark water below with a distant splash. The second guard turned at the sound. He saw his partner vanish. He saw Vetrov, already vaulting over the railing onto the roadbed, knife dripping black in the poor light. The guard fumbled with his rifle, bringing it up. Vetrov was on him. He batted the barrel aside with his left forearm and drove the knife up under the man's ribcage, into the heart. He clamped his other hand over the man's mouth, holding him close as he died, lowering him gently to the asphalt. A final, intimate violence. He was now on the bridge, exposed. The siren still wailed. Lights were converging from the far end. He could see figures running, silhouetted against the remaining lights. He had seconds. He turned and ran, not away, but towards the center of the bridge, towards the enemy side. His boots pounded on the asphalt, a loud, defiant drumbeat against the siren's scream. A shot rang out, then another. A bullet sparked off the railing to his left. They were shooting at the running shadow. He reached the midpoint, the highest part of the span. He skidded to a halt. This was it. Below him, he could see flashlight beams converging on the pier. They had found the charges. They would be cutting the wires now. Vetrov dropped to his knees. He was not praying. He was searching. With his knife, he pried at a heavy steel inspection plate in the roadbed. It gave way with a shriek of rust. Beneath it was a narrow access shaft, a vertical pipe leading down into the bridge's guts, past the roadbed, into the top of the steel superstructure. Without a second's hesitation, he shoved his pack into the hole. He slid in after it, feet first. It was a tight, dark, metallic womb. He pulled the heavy cover most of the way back over his head just as a storm of bullets tore into the spot where he had been kneeling. He was inside the bridge. He was in its throat. Above him, he heard the thunder of boots, the shouts of furious, confused men. They surrounded the hole. A flashlight beam stabbed down. He held his breath, pressed against the curved wall. They would not follow. Not immediately. It was too narrow, too dark. They would assume he had fallen through, was hiding below. They would focus on the bomb. Vetrov, in the absolute darkness, felt for his pack. He found it. His fingers closed around the manual trigger's backup device, a small handheld plunger connected by a long, coiled wire to the charges. He had kept this last connection, this final thread of control. He could hear them shouting, a voice of authority barking orders. The words disarmed and safe cut through the noise. They thought they had won. They thought the ghost was trapped, the bomb neutralized. In the dark, surrounded by the beating heart of the enemy, Vetrov's finger found the cold metal switch of the plunger. He did not push it. Not yet. Silence was a weapon. Vetrov held his in the dark. The shouts above him faded from panic to controlled urgency. Bootsteps moved away from the inspection plate. They were focusing on the disarmed bomb, on searching the riverbanks. They believed the threat was over. The ghost in the bridge was a nuisance, not a mortal one. He waited. The cold metal of the plunger grew warm in his fist. The coiled wire snaked down into the deeper darkness, a physical tether to the tons of hexogen below. They would have cut the timer's connection. They would not have found this wire hidden in the conduit of the bridge's own design. His final secret. Time, which had been his enemy for days, was now his ally. He needed them to believe. He needed the bridge to return to its purpose. He counted minutes in the drip of condensation, in the distant, fading wail of the siren. An hour passed. The vibration in the steel around him changed. From the chaotic thrum of alarm, it settled into a deeper, more regular pulse. The idle of heavy diesel engines. Then, the groaning strain of immense weight beginning to move. They were resuming traffic. The armor was crossing. A low, shuddering rumble passed through the very bones of the bridge. The first tank. He felt it through the metal pressed against his back. A slow, crushing progression across the span. Then another. A column. The spearhead, impatient, believing the way was clear, moving to crush the fragile new line at dawn. This was the calculus. This was the moment he had walked through a swamp of ghosts to reach. He could not see, but he could feel the procession of steel above him. The bridge vibrated with a continuous teeth-rattling roar. It was packed with rolling thunder. Perfect. He closed his eyes. In the absolute black, he saw not darkness, but the field from the first day. The boy's questioning eyes. The colonel's hollow stare. The photograph of the bridge, clean and arrogant. He saw the crack in the concrete, the precise angle of the charges. He saw the river waiting below. His thumb rested on the plunger. To push it now would be victory. It would also be death. The explosion would vaporize the pier, and the catastrophic collapse would swallow the bridge, the tanks, and the tiny steel chamber in which he was entombed. He would become part of the rubble, unclaimed, unknown, the ultimate ghost. He felt no fear, only a profound, icy clarity. This was the correct sum. One life for the 10,000 on the other side of the river. For the boy in the field who never got an answer. It balanced. He took a final breath, tasting oil and rust and cold metal. He pushed the plunger. The world did not explode. It unmade itself. There was no sound. Or rather, sound became obsolete. The first sensation was a light, a blinding white-orange flash that shot up through the access shaft, illuminating his chamber for a microsecond in stark, terrifying detail. Then the light was swallowed by a force. The concussion was not a wave of air, but a fundamental distortion of reality. The steel chamber around him screamed, a shriek of tearing metal, a billion nails on a cosmic chalkboard. The vibration became a violent, vertical lurch. He was weightless, then crushed, then flung against the walls as the universe tore apart at the seams. Above, the roar of the tanks was drowned by a deeper, more final symphony. The groan of failing steel, the cannon crack of shattered concrete, the shearing of colossal girders. A sound like a mountain falling. Through the metal he heard the screams. Human voices, brief and sharp, erased by the cacophony. The bridge was not blowing up. It was kneeling. The southern pier, its heart severed, gave way. The entire central span lost its support. With a final tortured shriek, it folded in the middle. The roadbed he had run across minutes before twisted, buckled, and pitched into a V-shape. The tanks, chained together by momentum and fate, slid into the collapse. He heard them, 30-ton steel beasts, sliding, grinding. Then the immense final ker-wump as they hit the water, one after another like a tolling bell. Then the water's revenge. A geyser, cold and black, shot up through the access shaft, hitting him like a fist. It filled the chamber in seconds. Icy, peat-dark river water, mixed with diesel fuel and the fine dust of pulverized concrete. The bridge was dying, and it was taking him with it. The chamber shuddered, wrenched sideways. A beam snapped, shearing through the space where his head had been. The world was noise, force, and choking black water. Survival was not a thought. It was an ancient spark in the animal core of his brain. He dropped the plunger. He fought towards the shaft, now a vertical pipe of churning foam. He hauled himself up, hands slipping on wet metal. Debris rained down. Bolts, chunks of asphalt, a shred of camouflage cloth. He breached into hell. The center of the bridge was gone, a jagged maw of twisted steel and empty air. The two ends tilted drunkenly towards the void. The night was alive with horror. The dying spotlights swinging madly, painting surreal scenes of collapse. Figures flailing in the water amid an island of sinking, burning wreckage. The monstrous, settling groans of the dying structure. He was on a sinking island of broken roadbed. There was no plan, only instinct. He saw the main cable, a thick, twisted serpent of steel, still attached to his section, arcing down into the raging water. It was the only path off the disintegrating platform. He leaped, wrapping his body around the cable. It burned his hands, peeling skin. He slid, a controlled fall into chaos, into the freezing, fuel-choked river. The cold was a sledgehammer. It drove the air from his lungs. He surfaced, gasping, amidst a slick of oil and splintered wood. A burning tank, half submerged, cast a hellish orange glow on the scene. He saw soldiers swimming, screaming, clutching at debris. He saw others face down, still. He was a ghost among ghosts. No one saw him. No one cared. The enemy was the river, the fire, the crushing weight of their own ruined machines. He did not swim for the bank thick with enemy soldiers and chaos. He did not swim for the far shore. He turned onto his back, letting the current take him. It was the same current that had helped him reach the pier. Now it would carry him away. He floated, barely moving his limbs to stay afloat, a piece of dark wreckage among many. The cries, the searchlights, the burning bridge, all receded. The sound faded, replaced by the rush of water in his ears and the deep, satisfied groans of the river reclaiming its bed. The sky in the east began to lighten, from black to bruised purple. Dawn was coming, the dawn he had been hired to prevent. He floated for an hour, maybe two. The cold was no longer a sensation. It was his new state of being. His limbs were numb logs. His mind began to drift, hypothermia weaving strange dreams with memories. The swamp, the boy on the bank, the knife in the dark. His boot struck something solid. Mud. A reed brushed his face. He had washed ashore on a small wooded island, or a remote bend of the river far downstream. He did not know which side he was on. It did not matter. With the last of his will, he crawled. An inch, a foot. Out of the water, onto the muddy soil, into the shelter of tall, dry grass. He could go no further. He lay on his back. The sky above was clear, paling to a delicate, innocent blue. A perfect dawn. He could hear birdsong, tentative, then growing. Nature, indifferent to the thunder upstream. In the distance, from the east, from the direction of his own lines, came a new sound. Not the deep rumble of enemy tanks, but the sharper, higher-pitched thunder of his own artillery. A rolling, continuous barrage, the sound of an army, given a reprieve, striking back. He listened to it. A faint, grim smile touched his cracked, bloodless lips. It was not a smile of joy. It was the smile of a man who has heard the correct answer to a terrible equation. His hand, lying in the mud, slowly curled into a fist. A weak, final clenching of will. Then the fist went slack. The birdsong filled the world. The sun, clear and cold, broke over the trees and found him there, a pale statue of mud and exhaustion, finally at rest. The ghost had delivered his message. The bridge was gone. The thunder had its answer.